Oh, hey everybody, it's me, Crystal Mech. You caught me in the middle of shopping for body spray. Gotta smell good for the ladies. What's this one? Scent of Nature?
Okay, maybe not directly inhale next time.
It smells like deer carcass.
Well,
Okay. Well, if that's what all the women are into these days, it's gotta be worth something. But who even needs nature, am I right? Everyone's always talking about how they get to go outside during the summer and enjoy the nice weather. But to a guy like me, summer only means two things. First, I'm gonna perspirate every time I take a shit. But second, and most importantly, it's time for gaming Christmas.
Yeah, all those video game journalists out there like to call it the Electronic Entertainment Expo, but guys, come on. We all know what it really is. Apparently there's been this stigma for the past few years that E3 is dying. Hey, guess what? All you doomsayers out here, this is what's really happening.
who killed him?
I mean, but who cares anyway, am I right? I mean, it's already looking like it's gonna turn into a Hunger Games fan club. Breaking news, every video game ever made will now have a Battle Royale mode.
Minecraft was a mistake.
Ah yes, those were the good old days where games weren't all about opening shiny crates or dropping from 100 feet in the air and killing each other. If I recall correctly, those days were, I don't know, they ended sometime around last year.
You know, in all seriousness, we really didn't get much further than we were 2 years ago in this genre.
For the most part, these games still dump you into giant, massive overworlds with almost nothing to do in them. The only major difference is that we went from liberating outposts and climbing radio towers, just cutting out the middleman and spending most of our time shooting each other.
Back in the old days when the term open world was more synonymous with a single-player experience, even Nintendo wanted a piece of the pie.
I can't wait to drop off the battle bus.
And with the Wii U unsurprisingly waning in sales due to poor marketing, Nintendo had to bounce back pretty quickly with this one. In addition, beyond Smash Brothers, the Wii U didn't have very much AAA first-party support from Nintendo. There wasn't even a Zelda title at launch like most other systems.
So nearing the end of the Wii U's life cycle, and I use the term life cycle very loosely because honestly, the Wii U was pretty much killed in its infancy. You may as well have just called it the Dreamcast 2. Nintendo unraveled the curtains on what would be considered the very last AAA first-party game to be released for the Nintendo Wii U. These guys put so much faith in this game that they not only decided it would be one of the flagship launch titles for the Nintendo Switch, then known as the mysterious NX, they dedicated the entirety of their 2016 E3 conference just towards this game. When it came to Breath of the Wild, Nintendo doubled down and put all of its chips into the pot. All the while promising to deliver a narrative and interactive experience that would forever change the way the gaming public would view not just the Zelda series, but open world games in their entirety. And what we got after 2 years of non-stop hype was an okay Skyrim clone. Yeah, that's right, I said it. What are you gonna do about it, huh?
Oh yeah, that's right. Ever since 2011, being even somewhat like Skyrim is enough to get you to win Game of the Year. I mean, not to entirely discredit the work of Eiji Aonuma and his team, because they all did a very good job, but its competition was pretty stiff in 2017. I mean, you had games like Nier Automata, Persona 5, Wolfenstein 2, The New Colossus, Super Mario Odyssey, Hellblade, Senua's Sacrifice, Mario and Rabbids Kingdom Battle, Knack 2, how the hell did it beat Knack 2? Yo Noid 2, Enter the Void, Arcade Classics vs. Super Mario Bros. On Switch, Parappa the Rapper remastered on PS4, Voodoo Vince remastered on Xbox One. What the hell is this? Whatever this game was. All 7 of the games that were released on the PlayStation Vita? All 12 of the games released on Nintendo 3DS? I mean, for Christ's sake, it even beat out Jumanji 2. I thought for sure that one was gonna be Game of the Year. Wait, what? Hang on, what? That was a movie? How come you people don't tell me this shit before I write it down? Whatever, I guess my point is that I enjoyed the game, I really like it, but I honestly don't think it should have been Game of the Year. I mean, don't get the wrong idea or anything, I really do love Breath of the Wild, it's a lot of fun. I mean, come on people, let's fucking put this into perspective for a minute. Taking a look at this shit, you see this landmass, you see how fucking big it is? This is what you start out on. That's not even a fucking 15th of the actual size of the goddamn overworld. And you're probably thinking to yourself right now, well, there's no way that they actually put that much detail into every single part of this fucking gigantic overworld, did they? Oh, believe me, they did. You go to a new area in this game and it always feels so fresh and exciting, no matter how little it is. And it rewards exploration. There's actually stuff to do in this overworld. Let me give you the rundown real quick.
You can tame horses. You can take pictures. You can dress up just in time for the winter.
Or for Dia de los Muertos.
Or for a cannibal feast. You can make piles of giant toenails in the street.
Is this true? Oh god.
You can even bomb jump like Samus from Metroid. Okay, maybe not. You can climb up the side of an active volcano in your underwear. You can take on giant eldritch abominations, embodiments of shadow and despair, with a wet mop. You can get lost in this fucking place.
Fucking goddamn piece of shit!
But most of all, most importantly, you can ride a deer.
Remember that level in Castle Crashers where you have to escape the giant bog monster on top of a deer propelling itself with its own diarrhea? Pussy shit. You can slay robots. You can slay giants. You can slay giant robots on top of a deer. Remind me, how is this not the greatest game ever made?
Well, in my opinion, an even greater game was released in 2017, and that game, the game that got me to buy the system that it was on, was Super Mario Odyssey. Yes, it is not nearly as long as Breath of the Wild. Also, yes, it can be a bit repetitive at times. But you know something? It might be my nostalgia goggles messing with my vision here, but I love the shit out of every single moment in Super Mario Odyssey. I had not felt so much joy and so much energy from a video game since playing Portal 2. It controls like an absolute dream. With Cappy around, Mario has access to so many new moves and abilities. And this is without even getting into the capture mechanic itself, which is a lot of fun to mess around with. Every level is lush and lively, bustling with activity, with lighting and shaders that push the Switch to its maximum capability. And this is all without mentioning the fantastic music score or the extra modes that were added post-launch. It was absolute ecstasy for people like me who grew up playing a lot of Super Mario 64 and other Mario titles. And unlike the vague and somewhat ambiguous marketing about game mechanics for Breath of the Wild, Super Mario Odyssey's marketing was upfront that it was going to be exactly like Super Mario 64 in Sunshine. Large, sprawling worlds with plenty of collectibles to find, times 11. Maybe it is just my bias showing, but honestly, if you really think about it, Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild didn't mean as much to the Zelda series as Odyssey meant to Mario. With every new Zelda game, it seemed like they were either trying something new or returning to form, like with Link Between Worlds or Twilight Princess. But you could argue that the last true 3D non-linear Super Mario experience was Super Mario Sunshine, which came out over a decade ago. So not just in terms of enjoyment, but for, in my view, significance to its own series, Odyssey just trumps Breath of the Wild in that aspect. So yeah, as much as I really did enjoy Breath of the Wild, Odyssey definitely takes the mantle of Game of the Year for 2017 in my eyes. Bottom line, Breath of the Wild's fantastic, and I completely get why people like this game so much. But there's a reason why I don't consider it my favorite game of 2017. In fact, there are 3 reasons, because that's kind of the format I set up. Starting off with the elephant in the room, because I know a lot of people already expected this. All the weapons in Breath of the Wild have the durability of a wet napkin dropped into a vat of corrosive acid. It makes sense for things like mops and soup ladles to break easily if you try to bludgeon someone with them, but even things like steel broadswords, spears, magic rods, hell, even the fucking Master Sword itself can't take any more than a few hits before vanishing. And they don't even break in a realistic way either. They just kind of poof into fairy dust, like it was killed by the Infinity Gauntlet or something. But Crystal Mech, this forces you to use different weapons and experiment with more kinds of weapons.
Silence, you fetid basement dweller. You talk out of line again and I will tell your mother.
No, anything but Mom.
Forced experimentation, my ass. Is there any valid reason to pick up a traveler's sword over a royal broadsword? Or a sword that shoots lightning that makes enemies drop their equipment? No!
No, there isn't. They're all gonna break anyway, so you may as well just use the fucking better one. This system just exists to be a tedious hindrance. And yes, before you ask, you do have limited inventory space. Not so much for food and materials, mind you. You can lug around as many watermelons, poisoned dark frogs, and full-course meals in the back of your pocket as you'll ever need. But what's that? You want to put more swords in your inventory? Come on, get out of here. Who do you think you are, the hero of time? You think you can just get to that point without working for it? No, no, no. You gotta earn it the hard way, like the rest of us. And what is the hard way, you ask? Aw, come on, man. It's simple. All you have to do is find this magical tree man hiding in the woods, give him back his magical mariachi maracas, collect a bunch of nuts from the twig people by moving metal boxes around and stealing apples, and have him dance and sprinkle magic juice all over your face. I can't believe you didn't know that. It's like you never played a friggin' Zelda game before. Come on, man. So yeah, this already sucks, but this is gonna get worse. Believe you me. Alright, so big whoop, weapons break. A whole bunch of good games have this kind of system. But you know what a whole bunch of other games with breakable weapons have that Breath of the Wild doesn't? A frickin' durability meter. Come on, guys. This is role-playing design 101. In a game where you can get into encounters with enemies that have more health than the damn final boss, it's crucial to need to know when your weapon is going to break because it can happen mid-fight, and often does. Take a game like Fallout New Vegas or Fallout 3. These games have durability meters for every single piece of equipment that you can wear or wield in your hand. When you equip a weapon and exit the menu, it even shows you the durability meter on your HUD. And you know what? People still hated this. That's why the system, except for maybe certain pieces of power armor, is entirely removed in the 4th game. So yeah, people don't like this to begin with, I get it. But the point is that there are good ways to do a durability system. Even Dark Souls, one of the most difficult games known to man, at least has the decency to give you a durability bar to tell you when your weapon is about to break. The only warning signs that you get in Breath of the Wild that your equipment is about to break is that it starts to flash red and you receive a message on screen. Mind you, this is when it's about to break. You don't get any information regarding this beforehand. Even worse is the fact that you can't repair any of your equipment if it gets damaged. Yep, all those pieces of amber and opal that you keep mining from ore veins on mountains, yep, they pretty much just exist to be sold. You can't take them to a blacksmith or anything like that because there are no blacksmiths in a fantasy setting. What the fuck? And that's not even the crux of it. There are some items in the game that are wielded kind of like weapons, but are intended for other purposes, like torches and korok leaves. But the thing is, using them for things not related to combat doesn't use up their durability for whatever reason. Does the game tell you this?
Nope.
Is the game at least consistent about this?
Nope.
You can carry a lit torch from one end of the map to the other, but you can't use a thing called a drill shaft for its intended purpose of breaking rocks without it eventually breaking. What the frick? This is further compounded by the fact that none of this equipment can be manually upgraded. Yet another implicit feature of most RPGs, glaringly omitted from Blarg of the Butthole. Weapons can have attributes, sure, but that's all up to the random number god. You have to go out and search treasure chests and hope that the item in question has an effect on it. There's only one, count it, one, just one, set of equipment that can be upgraded in this game. Your clothing. And to do that, you have to find great fairies scattered about the overworld. And you also have to hoard several rare materials in order to fully upgrade certain armor sets. And you also have to be filthy stinking rich because the great fairies won't even come out unless you pay them. And for some reason, you can't upgrade your armor to full strength without finding all of the great fairies and releasing them. And anytime you want to just visit them, it's a huge pain in the ass because then you have to teleport to a nearby structure instead of directly to them. And walk, fly, or climb all the way up to them. If that sounds like too much fun for you, well, sorry Charlie, unless you want to get one hit killed by almost every enemy in the late game, you have to do it. If you're the kind of person who knows the ins and outs of this game, then this next point probably isn't going to be news to you. But there's a recurring problem of mundanity in Breath of the Wild in terms of mechanics and features. And I'm not necessarily talking about how Breath of the Wild attempts to justify making Hyrule an expansive overworld, because like I said, it does a really good job of doing that. There's no one place in the Kingdom of Hyrule that I believe serves no purpose at all. I could be smack dab in the middle of a grassy knoll with no NPCs or enemies in sight, and I could still chop down the grass and get items from
from it. The problem is when you look at the systems in place, at the content that the game delivers you. To kind of give you the idea of what I mean, and to segue from the weapon durability problem, let's talk about the combat. I know, you're probably sitting there thinking, geez, what an uptight bastard. He's already talked about combat in 2 straight episodes of his series. Like, what the hell does he want from these people anyway? Does he want to juggle enemies like in Tekken? Let me just start off by saying the combat in Breath of the Wild is serviceable, but holy goddamn hell is it repetitive. Yes, pretty much every game in the series has repetitive combat, but think of how Link is portrayed in Smash Brothers. In all of his appearances, he uses boomerangs, bombs, bows and arrows, hook shots, and not only could he use all of this equipment and more in combat in previous games, he also had magic spells, for Christ's sake. Even in Skyward Sword, which is often considered the perennial black sheep of the series, even that game had its own set of equipment that you could use and a motion-based combat system. A lot of people ragged on this system, but I thought it was really cool, and it actually gave some depth to the combat for once. And it made Girahim one of my favorite bosses in the entire series, because he would cook you and eat you alive if you tried to use the Wii Sports Resort tactic of flailing your sword around. But Breath of the Wild, in comparison, it's just brainless. Most combat scenarios, if you're not cheesing everything by sniping it from a distance or using Sheikah Slate abilities, are the standard fare. They all play out really similar. And this is regardless of what weapon you use, ranged or otherwise. All of the dozens of weapons you can pick up in Breath of the Wild fall into just 3 weapon categories. You got one-handed striking weapons, you got two-handed striking weapons, and then you got spears. And don't try and bullshit me by saying that boomerangs and magic rods should be their own category, because they attack exactly like other one-handed striking weapons. If a melee weapon belongs to one of those 3 weapon categories, their attacks are exactly the same. You remember Borderlands? You remember Gearbox's claims that this game had millions and millions of different guns, even though they were all just differently colored reskins with different stats? Same exact principle here. Even through their minor differences, combat isn't really all that different for each of the weapon classes either. You either press X until it dies, or you jump out of the way and then press X until it dies. You have special attacks, you have a jumping attack, you have parries, and I honestly didn't really find much use for any of these. Sure, you can parry a Guardian's laser right back at it and deal heavy damage, but what's the point in using it in regular combat? You may as well just dodge out of the way with perfect timing, because then it translates to something called a Flurry Brush, where time slows down and you basically get 10 free counterattacks. In fact, this game's combat is kind of influenced by those "why would you do this instead of doing this" moments. This is the kind of experimentation that I feel is nullified in Breath of the Wild that was exemplified in its predecessor. Try to remember the first time you encountered a like in Ocarina of Time, and let's assume that you already know that they can eat your equipment. There are several efficient ways to deal with these guys.
For instance, with proper spacing, you can hit these guys with melee attacks, but you can also lob bombs at them from a distance. You can freeze them with ice arrows to make the melee approach a bit more safe. You can fire your hook shot at them, which stuns them and puts you in a melee range, or you can use magic in the form of Din's Fire, an area of effect fire explosion. These are all viable approaches, and the ones that deal fire damage actually do kill likes in one hit. But the drawback to that is you have to have magic in your inventory to use them. So in the event that you do run out of magic in the middle of the dungeon, you still have a couple of efficient ways to deal with likes.
The approach in Breath of the Wild is generally the same, but there are scenarios like fighting fire wizrobes. Like, why would you not use ice weapons to kill them instantly? Ice weapons in general in this game are really overpowered. Like, why would you fight this group of goblin creatures on the cliff when you could just freeze them and push them off? There are some areas that I walk into that have these goblin enemies just standing carelessly next to a bunch of explosives, and I'm just sitting here going, gee, I wonder what the hell the game wants me to do. But by far the worst offender of this is late in the game, you actually get the ability to craft arrows that kill anything in the game in one hit. This excludes bosses, of course, but they're on a whole nother wavelength. I'm gonna get to them in a minute. And I guess the trade-off is all of their equipment is destroyed with it, but you already have these powerful arrows, so why would you need anything else? In normal combat against normal enemies, when you don't have these overpowered things, why wouldn't you just use the weapon with the best attack stat? Why spend precious minutes poking away at enemies with the best spear in the game when the best two-handed sword in the game does 30 more damage? The bosses also suffer from this because a lot of the time there's usually one good way to damage them, or otherwise put them in some kind of stun state that leaves them vulnerable. You see this thing right here? It's called a Hinox. Yeah, try and guess what this thing's weak point is. I'll give you a hint. It's not reciting emotionally moving poetry to it. I'll give you a second hint.
You don't need any more friggin' hints!
Even the Ganon Blight bosses that are required to beat most of the game's main dungeons kind of fall into this.
A lot of them start out okay. They pretty much let you approach from any angle and attack with whatever weapons you have on hand, and it usually does the job pretty well. But then halfway through most of these fights, they end up throwing attacks at you that can only be interrupted using some of the Sheikah Slate abilities that you learned at the start of the game. So nope, back on the railroad for you, buddy. What, you thought you had control in the game that we told you had complete control over? Get out of here. You're not the hero of time. You're our hero of time.
And while we are on the subject of combat, not only is it tedious, it's also way too easy. This isn't because you can utterly steamroll anyone in the game. If you try to fight a Lanayru at a low level, you'll get your ass kicked. No, the reason it's too easy is because if you take damage during a fight, you can just pause the game and just gorge on a bunch of snacks and heal yourself. You would think with strong, powerful enemies that can one-shot you at low levels, this wouldn't be a problem, but there's this tiny little mechanic that's hidden in the game that prevents you from getting one hit killed if you have full health. So if you do get smacked down to one last hit point, just pause the game, eat a meat skewer, and you're good as new.
I'm just trying to imagine this from the monster's point of view, where time suddenly freezes and Link just starts shoving a bunch of cooked apples into his mouth.
In the old games, if you took damage during combat, well, tough shit, buddy. You better have a potion or some Lon milk on hand. And I see some posts on the internet where this has been removed in Master Mode. The entire concept of Master Mode is just pitiful to me. Like, if you have to add in this extra mode to make the game 10 times harder, it just makes it blatantly obvious that you're compensating for the game's already painstakingly easy difficulty.
And this game doesn't necessarily just have a problem with lack of variety in the weapons category either. The game's primary loot system also suffers from a lack of variety. And then of course, if we're talking lack of variety, it would be pretty much criminal if we didn't mention any of the shrine challenges, which aside from being marginally different from one another, all look the same and consist of a really dense packet of Breath of the Wild's content. But let's open up with the loot system first. Are you sick and tired of loot boxes yet? Are you tired of your rewards being entirely randomized for the sake of monetization? Well, I will give Breath of the Wild this. It doesn't make you pay for any of this shit. But unbeknownst to you, you know all those treasure chests that you find kind of scattered about the overworld? A lot of which require you to essentially go out of your way to get them, with the exception of certain chests dedicated to certain quests and found within certain shrines. All these chests give you random loot upon opening them. You could spend upwards of like 15 minutes clearing out an encampment of goblins, open up the reward chest, and find a gemstone, which you can find just by breaking rocks. Or it could give you a grand total of 20 rupees, which in this game's economy amounts to about 20 cents. And like I said before, if you want bonus stats on your weapons, the random loot system is the only way to accomplish this. I think the way it works is that as you progress through the game, you do receive better loot drops with more of these modifiers attached to them, which, okay, that's a little better. But it kind of took away from the exploration aspect for me a little bit. Like, why would I bother to go to this part of the map when all I'm gonna find is the same stuff over and over again?
Which brings me to the shrines, which are intended to be replacements for most of the dungeons in the previous Zelda titles, alongside each of the divine beasts that you have to conquer. Let me go ahead and paint a picture for you. Imagine you're playing Ocarina of Time, and the developer decided to add 50 more dungeons to the game. Wow, sounds great. And then you realize all 50 of these dungeons are reskins of the Great Deku Tree and the Ice Cavern,
with only nominal differences between them, like enemy placements and a few different puzzles.
And there you have it, folks. That's Breath of the Wild's dungeons for you.
Oh yeah, and the chests in here also have random loot. So any of those extra puzzles and challenges that you have to complete in any of the divine beasts to get treasure chests feel worthless. Because making progress in all these dungeons basically amounts to using the Sheikah Slate abilities you got at the start of the game. I will give them this. I do like the Sheikah Slate mechanic where you move the dungeon around in order to get to different places, but even that kind of loses its luster after maybe the third or fourth time you do it. And it really kind of sucks because there's a lot of cool areas in the overworld that would serve perfectly fine as their own miniature dungeons. Named locations like the Yiga Clan hideout, and then there's this gigantic place. It's called the Forgotten Temple. Yeah, that's a pretty apt name because it looks like the developers forgot to add anything interesting to it. This place reeks of unfulfilled potential. It's like they designed this to become a dungeon, and then it just didn't. And then they realized the game was suddenly going to come out in a couple months, and they were like, oh crap, there's this big open space we did nothing with. We'll just fill a bunch of guardians in there and we'll put a fucking shrine in there. Who cares? The DLC's even more disappointing on this front because it's just more shrines. Who freaking cares? It feels like I'm playing one of those level editor games like Little Big Planet and just playing user-submitted levels all the time. Again, say what you will about Skyward Sword, but that game had awesome dungeons like the mining facility and the Lotus Temple, and this one that's literally inside of a pirate ship. I'm not saying I didn't really enjoy many of the shrines because some of them were good brain teasers, but variety is the spice of life, and I didn't play Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild for dungeon diversity akin to that of a crossword puzzle. Even on the overworld, there are several areas of the map that have literally no plot significance at all. Farron Woods and the Hebra Mountain region could have been cut from the game entirely due to budgetary reasons, and the game still would have had a full-fledged campaign. And I have no problem with extra content being added to the game, except when the content largely consists of you staring at blue corridors for half an hour. And as long as we're talking about redundancy, we can also talk about quest rewards too, because a lot of the rewards you get for completing quests are access to certain shrines, and a lot of these quest reward shrines are typically just rooms with chests and a spirit orb in them. It's kind of a minor complaint, but these rooms feel extremely unnecessary. Nintendo could have just given me the reward through the quest giver, or just spawned it on the ground instead of making me go through a loading screen and several dialogue boxes. But sometimes that's not even enough. Sometimes you have to complete a quest and then do the shrine on top of it. Like, I'll complete a quest that has me track down the location of a shrine from 5 different locations, and then the reward for all of my troubles is the major test of strength. People want to complain about padding in games like Mario Odyssey. This is padding. Spend nearly like 30 minutes on a quest, and then all of a sudden I have to fight a boss that uses up all of my freaking destructible equipment. It just keeps going. This wild ride never stops. Oh yeah, that's right. I knew I was forgetting something. Hey guys, you like Korok seeds? Oddly enough though, I didn't really hate the Korok seed trials as much as some of the other trials you have to do in this game. They're pretty much the only thing that keeps 90% of this game's overworld from being useless to visit, and the rewards for them are collectibles that allow you to expand your inventory, which kind of alleviates the problem I had earlier, but not entirely. Partly because the crazy dancing tree man that I mentioned earlier keeps moving around the overworld with barely a hint of where he's going to go next, and it's also because they're kind of the low-hanging fruit in this scenario. If you include over 300 of anything in a video game, it gets tedious trying to collect it all. I don't think this last issue is particularly damning or anything like that, but if you take a look back at some of the previous Legend of Zelda entries like Majora's Mask and Wind Waker, one thing they tend to have in common is they have a lot of memorable sound design. Most of the games actually have some kind of musical motif in them anyway. You have the ocarinas in the old 64 titles, you have the titular Wind Waker baton, you even have the friggin' harp from Skyward Sword. Even in goddamn Twilight Princess, where Link didn't even have a friggin' instrument, they still found a way to include a musical motif with Wolflink. And all of these instruments did really cool shit within the game. The Ocarina of Time, I shouldn't even have to explain what the fuck that does. The Wind Waker baton lets him control the wind in the ocean at will. Even the stupid-ass harp from Skyward Sword lets you, I don't know, fucking summon this giant space whale. And you know what? Yes, that is stupid, but at least it's something. The only thing that comes even close to matching this in Breath of the Wild is this Birdman with an accordion, and his sole purpose is to let you know where certain shrines are. He's not even part of the main plot. Now that may seem like a minor gripe, and yes, it is, but it relates to a bigger issue with Breath of the Wild. For the scope of the game presented here, the sound design really isn't all that great. Honestly, I think this is an issue shared by a lot of open world games, but if you take a look back to games like Assassin's Creed and Skyrim and even Minecraft to an extent, even when you're just wandering around in the wilderness or in the streets of Venice, there's music playing, and it's memorable. And hey, would you look at that? When you look at the old games, they also do this. One of the most memorable tracks in the entire series is the song that plays in Hyrule Field in Ocarina of Time. And that's just when you're traveling between destinations or dicking around in the overworld. And almost all the Zelda games do this too, even during the flying sections of Skyward Sword, which many would argue is one of the most terrible and tedious features in the entire series. Even that shit has some really good music accompanying it. Then you get to Breath of the Wild's overworld, and you're lucky to hear like 5 or 6 random piano notes every 2 minutes. Now don't get me confused, I'm not saying Breath of the Wild has a bad soundtrack, because it has some really memorable songs. It has some of my favorite songs in the entire series. The part where you're assaulting Varuta with Prince Sidon and the Zora domain is one of the most memorable and awesome moments in the entire series. And this is largely in part due to the amazing soundtrack that accompanies it. But the real truth to it is a lot of these songs are few and far between. All these epic and bombastic orchestral pieces are buried underneath monotone and dull piano riffs that comprise most of the game's soundtrack. And when the soundtrack isn't like my cat climbing around on a keyboard, it's also largely repetitive and uninspired sometimes. A good example of this is when you encounter a guardian. You have these giant hulking metal monstrosities walking around Hyrule, killing everything in sight. And yet when they encounter you, this is the song that plays. Yep. Just those same 6 notes, over and over and over and over and over again. I'm not gonna say it doesn't fit the theme, but it's also very lazy. And that theme you hear when you boot up the game, yeah, that's the theme for every single shrine in the game. And there are over 100 of them. And people wonder why I think this game is repetitive. I'm just saying, if games can make different dungeons have different music, like Pikmin and hell, even some of the other Zelda games, I really don't know what the excuse is here. Even just a couple more similar sounding songs would be better than the same song over and over and over again. But if we're talking about bad sound design, then oh god, we have to mention the English voice acting. Oh my god, it's atrocious. Zelda sounds like she's talking through a goddamn telephone from the 1990s.
Take it. It will help guide you after your long slumber.
Daruk sounds exactly like I would expect Jabba the Hutt's English to sound like.
The princess is a strong personality. So strong, she can't quite see the range for the peaks. Remember that.
Prince Sidon's voice actor does not nearly produce enough testosterone.
Pardon the entrance, but you're a Hylian, aren't you? I was hoping perhaps you'd have a moment to talk.
No!
If you told me that the same guy who voiced him voiced Rivali, I'd believe you.
Proper utilization of my superior skills, I see no reason why we couldn't easily dispense with Ganon. Now then.
Just listen to Impa's voice for a minute and tell me with a straight face that this sounds like somebody who is over 100 years old.
So, you're finally awake. It has been quite a long time, Link.
I have met people in their 20s that sound older than her. I would have taken Impa's voice actor from the CDI Zelda games over this. Oh, but the king of these, the literal king of these, is the voice actor for King Rome. Alright, so I want you to imagine to yourself what a 100-year-old, dead, ghostly royal king would sound like in any other medium. Go on. I'll give you a few seconds. You know, just ponder about it. Give it some thought? Okay, good. Okay, so let's see how Nintendo's official English voice actor wanted to represent King Rome through his enunciation.
That you make your way east out to one of the villages in the wilderness. Follow the road out to Kakariko Village.
Wait a minute. Wait a minute. Hang on, play that again.
Follow the road out to Kakariko Village.
What? You cannot be serious. Alright, pay attention. I'm going to give you a little bit of a history lesson on Zelda lore. Kakariko Village is a recurring area in the Zelda franchise, usually located at the bottom of a mountain, usually Death Mountain, the home of the Gorons. Kakariko Village is a gay strip club in Vegas. Nintendo paid this man to say the letter. I just thought I'd point that out. Jesus Christ, I mean, I knew SAG-AFTRA was a thing, but holy shit. I wouldn't be so pissed off about this, except the inclusion of voice acting inherently removes other features from the game, like the ability to name the protagonist. You know, a feature that literally every other Zelda game has. Like, forget all this bullshit about why Link can't be female. I want to know why Link can't be not Link. My point isn't just that they took this out, because I can live without having to name the protagonist. My point is that they
took this out to put in something that was shit. It's like taking my drinking water, my perfectly fine drinking water, and dumping arsenic into it. This isn't such a problem nowadays because Nintendo did patch the game and allowed you to change the language of the dialogue and cutscenes, so you can listen to the whole game in Japanese where they actually sound like they're trying. But if you're gonna build this Zelda game as a story that I'm gonna take seriously, how about you get some serious voice actors next time? I'm just saying. I'm not surprised this game won Game of the Year. Breath of Death 64 is a really good quasi-open world action RPG. But how many quasi-open world action RPGs do we need? Breath of the Wild may not be my Game of the Year 2017, or not even really my favorite Zelda game. I still enjoyed Majora's Mask more. But for all of the picking on it I've done, Breath of the Wild is still an amazing experience, and I would absolutely recommend getting it even for full price. Now, before I wrap this up, I want to end this video on a bit of unfortunate news. The deer who voluntarily and almost certainly not forcefully rode with me into battle did not survive the fight. Mr. Bubster was a valiant and elegant creature, and though he perished when he heroically sacrificed himself, and definitely not at all due to the carelessness of a YouTube editor, his legacy will certainly be kept in our hearts for the next 15 minutes or so. Mr. Bubster's wife and siblings wanted me to have you all leave a like, subscribe, and donate $200 to my bank account in his memory. It's what he would have wanted. Also, if you haven't already, go ahead and check out the other Faultline video I made on ukulele. I'll be trying to get at least one other video out in the next month or so stay tuned for that too. Alright guys, it's been fun, but I gotta jet. I gotta keep Marvel and Nintendo from suing me even though my channel isn't monetized yet. Ciao!